terms of making these issues go forward. Additionally, we have the issue of the budget language, Mr. Chairman, that you and I negotiated in the Senate Budget Subcommittee number 2. And for those who weren't present or didn't watch, I think it's important to recap. In an effort to get some level of trust and confidence, we negotiated in real time in an open and public hearing a commitment from the High-Speed Rail Authority to address some of these issues. The LAO was sitting in the meeting. Mr. Katz was there as one of the members of the authority. Ms. Porvahidi was there representing the staff. And in those conversations, we specifically said, can you get this work done by February 1st of 2011, and will you commit to do it? And in those open and public hearings, that commitment was made. I'm quoting now from the May 24th Budget Subcommittee hearing. Quote, I'm going to ask you publicly and on the record, forgive me for putting you on the spot, is February 1 a reasonable day? End quote. Board Member Katz responded, quote, we will meet the February 1, end quote, deadline. Ms. Porvahidi was there. She provided similar assurances. All this was on the record. Where are we today? Well, between that time and the budget, the new director, Mr. Van Ark, showed up, new on the scene, and expressed some concern about the language in the budget. Did me the kindness of meeting with me in my office. I expressed concern about any effort to undo the language that had been agreed to in committee, and I made it very clear to Mr. Van Ark that if there was a problem with the language going forward, it would affect my ability to continue to call myself a supporter of high-speed rail done right. Mr. Van Ark sat in my office and told me, looked into my eyes and said, I am prepared to live with that budget language. What happens next? October 7, we get a letter from Mr. Van Ark saying that he's no longer prepared to honor the language that was in the budget. And October 8th, we get word that the governor has vetoed that language. I am advised by my sources that that veto was a direct result of a request from folks at the High-Speed Rail Authority to veto the language which had been committed to in an open and public hearing by both staff and a member of the board, and which was committed to me personally by the head of the organization. Let me just say at that point, it becomes that much harder to work on the basis of trust and an expectation of good faith. Mr. Chairman, I should tell you that I asked the Legislative Council as well to answer the obvious question that occurred to me in the aftermath of the veto of the budget language, which is, as we are wont to say, can he do that? And I have a November 2nd letter from the Legislative Council's office that says, therefore, we conclude that the governor was not authorized to veto provision 2 of item 2665-004-6043 of Section 2 of the Budget Act pursuant to the line item veto authority. Not authorized. So it's our Legislative Council's judgment that that is not authorized under the line item veto authority. And that puts us in I think, an interesting position in terms of where we go from here with respect to the language that was, in fact, adopted by a 2/3 majority of both houses of the legislature. While all of that is going on, now we have press reports from the LA Times. I'll just read the two headlines. High-speed rail leaders receive consulting fees from firms with financial interest in the project, and California Bullet Train Agency can't document details of officials' foreign trips. That does not help with the trust. That does not help with the hope that we can operate in good faith. Why am I raising all of this? I'm raising all of this because we're back to now the essentially request from the authority that we should trust us as the basis for projections, and at this point that has become very, very difficult indeed to do. The projections are in my view, a topic that is excruciatingly boring and absolutely essential to understanding what's going on here. And I worry that because it is excruciatingly boring, that people will sort of rush right by this. But the conclusion I've come to is that what we build and where we build it and on what schedule is all driven by the expectations that the authority has about ridership. So if the ridership is wrong, then the what we build and where we build it and on what schedule is wrong, and may in fact be the basis of a great deal of unnecessary consternation up and down the state. I think the last observation I will make, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate your patience, and now you see why I passed on opening remarks. You know, I have constituents who have strong views at both ends of the continuum about high-speed rail. And for 2 years, I have been saying, hey, look, I have a role to play here in the process. I don't think it's appropriate for me to second-guess the High-Speed Rail Authority, which is constituted by the bond measure and state law to perform a certain function. I do think it's my responsibility to try and make sure that the process is a fair and appropriate and lawful one. Absent the kind of trust that we need, and absent the responsiveness to the commitments that have been made over and over again, I am going to be left with no choice but to insert myself increasingly into the process and to start offering comment and critique and suggestion about what happens more specifically. I don't want to do that. That's not my job description as a legislator, in my judgment. But the authority is leaving, in my view, little, if any, choice but for members to become more engaged, members who, with all due respect, frankly would prefer to be less engaged on these issues. So I want to stop there, and I hope that both Mr. Van Ark and Mr. Newman understand, you know, the easy thing to do would have been to let you say your piece, walk away from the table, and then drop all this on you. I didn't think that was fair. I didn't think it was appropriate. I wanted to share it before you came up to the table, and I hope that your comments will be in some way responsive to those concerns, and I'm sure we'll have some back and forth to try and understand where we go from here, given the record that I've just laid out. I don't want to presume the prerogatives of the chair here, but I do want to see, is there anything that the Legislative Analyst's Office would like to say in connection with the observations I've made?
No, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that will be the conclusion of this part of the assessment by the Ledge Analyst. Let's move on to